Hello, welcome to the next episode of An Espresso with Riccardo. I'm a creative producer and a brand photographer, and I'm here with Emma Wainer, who is a speaker coach. So Emma, do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself, who you are and what you do?
Certainly. Hello, Riccardo, and thank you for having me. So I'm Emma. I am the founder and the principal coach at Speaking at Work. And we're an organisation that really helps individuals raise their credibility and their visibility at work. And we do that through speaker coaching. So we use our blended speaking model to help people. We use a blend of organisational psychology, business coaching, and theatre practice to really help people speak with passion and purpose and power at work so that they raise their visibility and their credibility at the same time.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. We, by the way, recorded another video with you, which is, if you guys haven't watched it yet, I strongly recommend it, full of wisdom. So today the subject is storytelling again. You know, at An Espresso with Riccardo, we focus on creativity and stories. And I'm really happy to have Emma today. And we're going to talk about how to move your audience through strategic storytelling. So Emma, I wanted to ask you, first of all, I know we're both passionate about storytelling, but so what do you mean with strategic storytelling?
Sure. So there's two kinds of storytelling that we would use at work, really. In a work situation, we'd use strategic and agile. Strategic storytelling is when we have time to decide in advance the story that we're going to use. So, for instance, say you were going to go and talk to people about how visuals affect buying from customers. You might decide, well, I could use this particular story of this particular client before you go. And so you have time to think about what are the elements of that story that I might need to include? Why would this particular audience benefit from knowing about that? What does it say about me? So you have lots of time to really think about all the reasons to use that story and pick the right kind of story and pick the right bits of that story. You always want to be editing your stories because you may not need to tell all of it. We don't need to know all of it every time. Whereas agile storytelling is something you get to once you've been doing strategic storytelling for a while and you feel really comfortable with it. So agile is when you're in a meeting, you're with a client, something comes up and you can, in the moment, pull a little story from, I call them my story stacks. You pull a little story from your story stack and go, the client needs to know about this now, or my team really need to hear this now, because you know from practice using strategic storytelling that this is going to help them get over that sort of concern, that hump, that inertia, whatever it might be. That story is going to just tip them over the edge into action, which is what we always want. We want stories to be moving our audience forward into action.
Fantastic. Yeah, really inspiring. So, okay, that's really inspiring. So how do we actually write stories using this method that you just described now? So what type of stories works better when we need to present something, when we need to talk about something in public? Have you got any insights in that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, stories create connection with human beings. We digest stories in ways that we don't digest data. They're 22% more memorable. They have absolute commercial value. And there's a load of really interesting research that shows if an item has a provenance story, so an origin story for an item, it's 2,700% more desirable than if it doesn't have a story. So stories are really helpful to help move our audience into action. And like I said before, that's what we want. We want to move them into action. Now, we can start with the end if that's appropriate. So we don't always have to start. We don't always have to do beginning, middle, and end. It might be appropriate to start with the end. So if you think about things like Titanic, the story of the Titanic, right? We know what happens. The boat sinks, most people die. And yet we will still sit through that story. And in fact, the film was it was a smash hit. Things like the King's Speech, we know he makes the speech. And yet we sit through it thinking, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? We love that moving us through the story. So really think about the arc of your story when you're going to tell it. Is it better for me to start at the beginning and lead this audience through to the end? Or do they need to hear the end first? Do they need to hear the transformation bit before they hear how I did it or how they did it, whatever it might be? So really think about, what do the audience need to hear first that's going to hook their attention and keep them attending? Because it's not about you telling the story. You're the expert for sure, but you're not the hero. The hero in this instance is the audience and what they need to hear. So I think that's really important. Think about which bit needs to come first and what's going to be most useful for your audience. I think we mentioned in the last video that idea of go to where your audience are, start there, and then bring them gently with the story towards where you would rather they were. Much better, much more effective way of doing it than trying to say, come over here guys, it's really lovely. You know, it isn't going to work because they've got too far to travel. So go to them.
Absolutely, yeah, very, very interesting. So, and how can we write our stories? I mean, is there different elements that we can use in terms of preparing for a speech or a presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say most stories need a hero. There has to be a hero. Now, the hero might be you, it might be your audience, it might be a client, it might be an organization, but there has to be a hero. There's got to be someone that we can root for. And in the same way, there needs to be a villain. There's got to be someone we can go, boo, hiss to. We need that kind of like, and again, that could be an individual or it could be an organization. It can also be internal. So it could be your inner critic. You know, if you think about lots of sort of superhero stories, they always have an Achilles heel. There's always something. So it could be external, like Superman has kryptonite. That's a thing, an external thing that can damage him. Or there's so many stories now about the hero being reluctant. They don't want to do it. They're not sure. And can they do it? Do they have everything in them that they need? The inner critic kind of battle. We love that story because if they can overcome it, so can we. That it gives us hope that there's hope for us. You know, that sort of whole idea of Harry Potter in the cupboard, just a regular boy. He's just a boy in a cupboard whose family are, you know, not nice to him. And yet he becomes this incredible wizard that defeats the Dark Lord. You know, if that could happen to him, that could happen to me. And that has incredible value for an audience. You can, the fundamental truth, that's a really important one. What's the fundamental, like the human fundamental truth? Love, joy, hatred, sorrow. What is it that all humans in all cultures can connect with? Because that's the bit that will really sort of capture your audience's attention. If your story doesn't have a fundamental truth, then it isn't going to land quite as easily. And as I said, we want to know that struggle. We really have to see that struggle. And if there's a struggle, then there's a goal. You know, if you think about, if you go back to Lord of the Rings, you know, if Frodo was just given the ring and someone said, oh, can you take that to Mordor and just chuck it in the volcano? And he just went, yeah, sure. And off he popped and chucked it in the volcano. It's like, there's no story. There's nothing there, right? The goal's really clear. Yeah, the hero clear, but we're not seeing that struggle. You know, getting to that goal, that moment when he throws the ring in, like it's taken so long and so much to get there. We're really invested. So we need a good hero, we need a good villain, we need a good struggle, we need a clear goal. And there has to be a fundamental truth about it. So we understand that struggle that Frodo was having between power and giving up power. Yeah. So if it's got all of those elements, we're hooked. We're absolutely hooked. And they can be tiny. They don't have to be these huge stories. They can be really small and still really, really land.
Wow, this is super inspiring. It also makes me think about that. While you were talking about these different elements, it really made me think about life as well. Isn't it life a constant battle between our inner self and also obstacles that we found along the way? So we are the hero of our life. So in a way, that's probably the reason why we are constantly looking, reading, watching, experiencing stories and changing our stories as well. So it's incredible, isn't it? Isn't life about that? You know, just going through a sequence, an infinite sequence of obstacles and overcoming those obstacles. And I think in a way, when we watch film, that's what we want to hear, how the hero will overcome those obstacles and how he or she transform herself, starting from inside as well. So it's very interesting. This is parallel.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it gives us hope. That's a really big thing. It gives us hope. If they can manage it, then I can find something in me to help me manage this. You know, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fundamental truth that runs through all human beings. Definitely.
And I guess it's also like, I don't know, tell me what you think about this, but, you know, it's about also revealing our humanity. The more people will engage with ourselves and with our story and with our struggles. What do you think?
And we're so good as human beings. We pick up on inauthenticity. So if someone is trying to tell us a story where they're showing us their vulnerability, they're telling us that they're vulnerable, we'll go, no, inauthentic. We won't necessarily, not necessarily consciously, but unconsciously we'll feel not really connected to that. But if someone's demonstrating their vulnerability, as in they're telling a story where they're showing how, you know, things didn't go right for them, didn't work for them, and they have credibility at the same time, that's incredibly powerful. But if you don't have the credibility, haven't established the credibility, and you show vulnerability, or you're, you know, trying to manipulate with vulnerability, we'll pick it up and we'll go, no, that's not authentic. We won't quite know why, but we'll just kind of go, no, I'm not buying into that, and just step back a little bit. So yeah, that credibility, vulnerability balance, super important. Got to establish that credibility first, then you can show the vulnerability, particularly on things like social media. Really, really important that you've established your authority in your area of expertise before you show vulnerability. Otherwise it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Fantastic. So Emma, that's been super inspiring. I need to watch it again to take some notes because it's really, really inspiring. So thank you for that. So just to wrap up, just let us know how we can find out more about you. If people want to, you know, have book a coaching session with you, and if you got any kind of final tips for our audience.
Yeah, certainly. So stories honestly have commercial value. They're not fluffy, nice to have items. Find a way to include a small story, even if it's a case study, a client picture, in your pitching, in your presentations, as much as possible, and try and use sensory language. So anything to do with touch, feel, taste, smell, visuals, because that fires up more of the brain, and your audience, even that's one person, your audience will be attracted to that story much more. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me.
Thank you so much, Emma. And it's been very inspiring Espresso. So look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Riccardo. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.